Influence peddling has long been a concern about government. Most recently, the wife of a United States Supreme Court Justice appears to have been doing exactly that. I'm Dan Ringer, and we'll talk about influence peddling and the West Virginia Ethics Act right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
Should a governmental official, his or her spouse, or close family members be allowed to use their influence to affect governmental policy and actions? My guests are Teresa M. Kirk, Executive Director of the West Virginia Ethics Commission, and Commissioner Jonathan Turek. Thank you all for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's kind of a scary thing. I look at what you do, and I kind of get cold hands. You're the Ethics Commission for the state of West Virginia. There is almost nothing you can take up or nothing you can do that isn't going to at least irritate somebody in a position of power. Is that an accurate perception of what goes on?
Well, that may be a fair perception. We know if you're in the workplace, or if you're in the corporate world, or if you're in government, that at times when people go to change the rules, that could bother people because they're used to doing things one way, and now you're telling them that you've stepped back and you've looked at it and you believe that there's a better way of doing it. And so that can cause some tension. I'd like to believe it causes creative tension to the extent that it opens the door for debate on what are fair rules.
Well, we've had an ethics commission since 1989.
That's right.
And this is 2011. We still have one. So apparently nobody's been successful in executing you as a governmental agency.
Not that I know of.
Why do we have an ethics commission?
Well, I think our commissioners may be in a good position to answer that.
I think your intro actually set it up pretty well. I think that it's all about transparency and accountability in government, and it's all designed to eliminate self-dealing, or at least, and certainly even the appearance of self-dealing, or the impropriety that might be, some people might conclude looks like self-dealing. And so what we're trying to do is just make sure that people are aware and sensitive to the fact that, hey, conflict of interest exists. We're a small state. People can find themselves in circumstances where they're maybe trying to serve more than one master. They have to remember what the master that they have to serve is the citizens of the state of West Virginia or their municipality first, and their interest to come second. And I mean, sometimes people get a little bit sensitive when you have to remind them of that fact, because they obviously don't necessarily feel that that may be the case, and it might not be the case. It may be just a case of it looks like that. But if it looks like that, that's not a good thing, because people then lose confidence in government.
Well, and people are suspicious about government. If they're not getting exactly what they want, or let's personalize it. If I'm not getting exactly what I want from the government, then the government must be full of crooks and miscreants who are in it to line their own pockets. And unfortunately, historically, there have been enough incidents of that one place or another, not necessarily in West Virginia, not necessarily in your hometown, but there have been occurrences of it, so that the whole, I'm going to call it a profession. It's probably not the politically correct thing to say these days. The whole profession of politics gets tarred with that brush. And so often we hear that the appearance of impropriety is almost or just as bad as the impropriety itself. People lose faith in you, lose trust in you. Where are you?
I mean, it is a matter of trust with the people and the citizens of the state. And I mean, it is very, very important to protect that trust. I mean, that trust you know, without that trust, really government would grind to a halt. I mean, there is an impossibility about government with the absence of the trust. And so it is very, very important to nurture the trust and protect the trust. And I think that's what, you know, that is our primary role, let people know that, hey, we exist, we're out there to try to protect the trust, nurture the trust, and create that trust. And, you know, I think that people should have the trust. I think there are many, many dedicated public servants. I mean, there are so many people out there that are hardworking and serving simply the interests of the state of West Virginia or their local government or their local municipality, trying to do the best that they can. And those people need to be protected too. And we serve to protect, we protect them too.
You raise a good point. The Ethics Commission and the Ethics Act doesn't just apply to people who work in Charleston or who work for the state government.
No, no. Yeah, we cover the whole state from a PSD to a city council member.
PSD's Public Service District.
Yes,
right.
Yes, Public Service District. Even if you serve on a city parks board, we have jurisdiction over you.
That sounds ominous.
Big brother, maybe.
But you do look at the way business is conducted and the way the people who are conducting the business are doing that kind of business. We've used the word trust a lot here just at the beginning of the show. There's a quote that I got from your website, Teresa, the Ethics Commission's website. Government is a trust, and the officers of the government are trustees, and both the trust and the trustees are created for the benefit of the people. And that's attributed to Henry Clay in 1829. So this has been an issue almost as, well, probably as far back as we go as a nation, and farther back than we go as a state. What duty does a governmental official owe to the people that she or he works for?
Well, I think the main duty is that you put the public interest before your own interest. You have to remember that you are serving them, not yourselves. And I think it's also important to remember that different rules apply in the public sector than in the private sector. If you're in the private sector and you decide that you want to hire your son or daughter, if that's your business, then you can go right ahead and do that. But when you're in the public sector, you report to the public, and they want you to hire somebody based on qualifications and a fair process, not who you know.
Some years ago, there was an incident which I thought really well defined the difference between the public sector and the private sector. He was a member of the West Virginia Supreme Court. He was a very busy man, in a very, very responsible position. And rather than take the 20 or 30 minutes it would take him to go pick up his dry cleaning, he had his secretary do it. His secretary was a state employee, and it blew up on him big time as a result of that, because the rule was you do not use state employees to do personal functions. Yet, in my office, or maybe in your workplace, it wouldn't be uncommon at all for your boss to say, run down to the grocery store and get me some coffee, I need to take it home, or go pick up my dry cleaning. You might grouse about that, but hey, she's the boss. She can ask you to do that if it's necessary in her or his mind.
Yeah, there's a difference, obviously. I mean, I think that people understand the difference, and that is that his duty is to serve the citizens of the state or whatever it is. He's not to be in it for himself. When I operate my own business, I don't think anybody has a problem with me being in it for myself or for the benefit of me or my family. But when you assume the responsibilities of a public servant, you're not supposed to be exclusively in it for the benefit of yourself or your family. People understand that. That's the role. I mean, that's why, to a certain extent, these people deserve credit, because there is a certain amount of sacrifice that goes with it. It is not that people that are not serving as public servants aren't called upon to make, and that is you have to sometimes place the interests of other people ahead of your interests and those of your family. I mean, that's a hard thing sometimes to do, and but that's what it is that we expect of them. Otherwise, there's no trust that I can ever get a fair shake, because otherwise you're just in it simply for yourself.
I had a county commissioner tell me one time that he suggested to me that I never, ever wanted to run for the county commission. It never occurred to me, but he suggested I not do it. I said, well, why not? And he said, people call you 24 hours a day. The surface of the bridge is cracked, or the water's coming up, or there's a light pole leaning, and they expect their county commission to do something about that. And I said, boy, that's tough. That sounds like a job that nobody should have. And he says, no. He said, that's a job that needs to be done. That's the job that I knew I was going to be doing when I ran for election, and now that I'm elected, that's the job that I'm going to have to do. And he was absolutely right. But he can't really say it's a thankless task. People voted for him. That was thanks for the way he either said he was going to do it or the way he had been doing it. So it can be messy, but
I mean, it's still the grand experiment. You know, I think it's a great thing, but it was if people were to reflect upon it, it was truly, truly a revolutionary idea when it is that we decided that we would govern ourselves. And then we would hold these individuals responsible and accountable to ourselves because, you know, in the past, the things were done for the king. It was you served at the pleasure of the king for the benefit of the king, and the king served for the benefit of himself. Now, of course, an enlightened king would see that benefit extending to his sovereigns, but not necessarily. And we turned that idea completely up on its head, and we've been trying to perfect that idea for 250 years. And I mean, it's a glorious experiment. And we got to love that we're all engaged in it.
Yes.
If you talk to most political theorists and you ask them what the most efficient form of government is, a democracy or a republic is not at the top of that list. Most will tell you the most efficient form of government is a benevolent dictatorship. You have one person who makes all the decisions, and as long as he makes the decisions in the way that benefits at least a majority of the people, if not all of the people, everything's okay. The only problem is I've taken a survey, and John, you and I are the only two people qualified to be a benevolent dictator, and I'm not so sure about you.
Exactly.
So that brings us down to one person, which would be you.
And that would please me mightily.
Exactly.
But other people might take exception to it.
Right.
Exactly.
And so that gets us back to the democracy theory. And once again, self-government is a challenge, and it's an ongoing experiment, and how you put rules in place to make that happen.
We're talking about changes to the West Virginia Ethics Act. My guests are Attorney John Turak, who's a commissioner on the West Virginia Ethics Commission, and Teresa Kirk, who is the Commission's executive director. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. Well, what in the heck does a commissioner do, John?
Well, the commission, I'm obviously a commissioner on the Ethics Commission, and what we do is we preside over the enforcing the Ethics Act, and of course we preside over our department. We have the executive director who works with us for the whole staff, and our responsibility is to see to it that the Ethics Act is implemented, and to the extent that there are transgressions, then we also have some prosecutorial and powers to prosecute violations of it. I think the thing that I am really the most proud of is that West Virginia has what I would call a much more proactive approach to ethics, and we have a very aggressive outreach program with respect to education, which I think is excellent. And as I explained to you before, I said our approach is not the Venus flytrap approach. We're not seeking out, looking for people that are going to transgress so we can just, you know, snap like the mousetrap, come down on them. What we're really trying to do is educate people as to what the ethics laws are. People have the opportunity to write into the Ethics Commission and seek an advisory opinion, and that's a lot of what it is that we do, maybe the bulk of what it is that we do. We try to inform people as to whether or not their particular circumstances might actually constitute a violation of the Ethics Act or a potential violation of the Ethics Act. And then, of course, we counsel them as to what it is that we believe to be the appropriate way to handle that circumstance. And so we can head it off at the pass, so to speak, rather than wait until it actually becomes a full-blown transgression. And that's a lot of what it is that we do.
It is frequent, or at least common, for some poor governmental official, and I put that in quotes, poor governmental official, to step in it, to have a problem and not see it coming.
Yeah, that's not unusual. I mean, in a small state like we have, it's not unusual for somebody to be a local businessman or somebody like that, living in a small community, trying to run a local business, transacting business with a local municipality or a local community, then becoming involved in local government or on a local board. I mean, there are only so many people that are able to actually serve in these capacities. A lot of these people are volunteering to share, provide a lot of their own spare time in these capacities. And then the next thing you know, they find themselves serving on a water board, but also providing their business is the one that primarily provides maintenance for the vehicles that are utilized by the water board, and now we got ourselves a conflict. You know, can he actually serve on the water board and also have his business provide services to the water board? Well, that's a conflict. Of course, it's not something that he actually ever saw coming, you know. It was a natural for him to gravitate from one to the other and serve the community.
Well, and one of the tragedies is that in a small state, a small community like ours, people give up the right to do business in a lot of cases by agreeing to do government service.
Yeah, imagine that. And I mean, that's a credit to them that they're willing to do it. A lot of people, when you point it out to them that they can't do it, they don't give up the position on the board, they give up the business sometimes. And, you know, it's a credit to their commitment to serve.
I mentioned the West Virginia Ethics Commission website a few moments ago. They do have a website, and you might want to take a look at it. Certainly, if you are engaged in any sort of governmental activity as a governmental representative or employee, or if you're considering running for office or taking some kind of an appointment, take a look at it. It's wvethicscommission.org. wvethicscommission.org. It's all one word, and they have a dandy little booklet there. It's called A Guide to the West Virginia Ethics Act that you can download and print out that answers a lot of the very basic questions, but there are also links on the Ethics Commission's website to other resources, things that they have, or other websites that will help you come to grips, I think, quite well with what's required of a governmental servant. I said serve the government. You don't serve the government, you serve the people through the government. There have been some changes to the ethics law. There have been a few events around nationally and locally. Nationally, I alluded in the introduction to the show, the fact that Supreme Court Justice's wife has been working as a lobbyist. You know, there are rules about how that can happen. I'm not suggesting necessarily that she did anything incorrectly or he did, but people looked at it and said, that doesn't look right. In West Virginia, we had the governor's chief of staff resign as chief of staff and start working as a lobbyist the next day. There was absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it caused some changes to the rules when people looked at it and said, we're uncomfortable with that. So what changes have we had here recently?
Well, you were just talking about lobbying, so we'll start with that. During the 2011 session, there were several changes to the Ethics Act, and one was to strengthen our revolving door provisions. And let me explain to you what revolving door means. Yes, you know, but let's talk about the origin.
I know what a revolving door is.
Yes, okay. Well, you know what a door is. Well, obviously a door rotates out and it comes right back in. And in ethics laws, there's the theory that once you revolve out, there should be a waiting period before you revolve back in, before your former agency, to use the influence of your office. The theory being that if you're a citizen on the street and you want to register as a lobbyist, you have that right. But we were talking about public trust earlier. So when a high-ranking official leaves government and immediately takes their government hat off and puts their lobbyist hat on for compensation and comes back before the people they were working with the day before, that you have that appearance of influence peddling. And as we discussed, that it doesn't even have to be actual, it's the appearance, which goes back to trust in government. So you impose a cooling off period with the hopes that indeed that the public feels that they aren't using the prestige of their office to immediately turn around and receive compensation based on their prior government service.
It's interesting because everybody wants their senator, their congressman, their state senator, their member of the House of Delegates, the governor, to call them by their first name. Mm-hmm. They want to feel like they have a connection with these governmental officials, and they want to impress other people with that. Mm-hmm. As I saw the governor, he called me Dan or called me John or Teresa or whatever it is, and other people think more highly of you. But what you're saying is that if that relationship is too close, there's going to be a hands-off period. And what have we set up now?
What we have set up is a one-year waiting period. So if you're a high-ranking member of the governor's staff, or if you're a member of the legislature and you either leave your position or maybe you're not reelected, that before registering as a lobbyist for clients, you do have to wait 1 year. And then after that 1 year, you can proceed to register as a lobbyist.
There's a tendency, I think, among folks to think that lobbyists must be some species of subhuman that goes around manipulating things. And that's, I won't say it's never been the case, but that's not necessarily the case. In fact, if you talk to legislators or members of the governor's office, they will tell you that lobbyists provide a very, very important source of information. They tend to be experts in particular fields. They can bring information to the governmental official upon which they can rely, and since we are in a democracy and each side gets to speak out, you anticipate there are going to be lobbyists representing every point of view in an issue, and that brings the information to the table and allows it to be analyzed. So it's not something nasty to be a lobbyist, it's simply a job, but you're putting some conditions on it. The Ethics Act is putting some conditions on it to say if you're too tied in with that particular government, you can't do it right now. You're going to have to wait a bit.
Not right now, but down the road you may.
You made some other change, or there were some other changes. I say you made. You folks don't make these rules. The legislature makes the rules.
Yeah, and I think that, they deserve credit for, you said we made the changes, and then you said the act made the changes, but really it was you said we put the conditions, then you said the act put the conditions, but really it's the legislature that placed the conditions, and they deserve credit for that.
Mea culpa. I'll own up to that one. But you made some other changes. The legislature made some other changes regarding financial disclosure. What are these changes?
Well, the main change to the financial disclosure requirements are now that public officials have to disclose information relating to their spouses. And I brought with me today what is a financial disclosure form, and many public officials in the state fill these out every year. They come in February, and they're meant to be a snapshot of your finances the year before. Now, you don't list actual figures. If you're employed somewhere, it asks for your employment. In fact, our commission members fill out these forms. So Commissioner Turak would state where he's employed or what businesses he has interest in. And the purpose of the change is to extend those disclosure requirements to spouses. So no, your spouse won't be taking a form and filling it out, but if Commissioner Turak has a spouse, then he would provide her employment information as well. And the theory behind that is if you have a conflict in regard to your own finances, well, then you equally have a conflict in regard to the finances of your spouse. That's your household. So that's one reason these sort of changes are put into ethics laws.
So it has been the law up to this point that the governmental official has to disclose investments and sources of income and that sort of thing. Now we're saying that the spouse also has, or the information about the spouse has to be disclosed. I guess, John, in your case, you're the governmental official. You would have to report for yourself and for your wife. Your wife doesn't have any duty to do something in particular, does she?
Yeah, I would report the interests of my wife.
It also affects children in some regard?
Well, it is narrowly drawn in order that you have to disclose if you have any children or stepchildren who are employed by state or local government. And that's just one more piece of information that the legislature thought may be helpful to a citizen who has an interest in the financial interest of a public official.
Is that the point of this, is to let members of the public know who is interested in what, who's doing what?
Yeah, it's one more way to raise confidence in government. It promotes transparency, and it also has a more practical application. If you're a public servant filling out this form, during that process, it can assist you in identifying potential conflicts of interest. If somebody's asking about it, it can cause you to step back and say, oh, wait a minute, I may have business before my public body affecting that. Maybe I should call the Ethics Commission. So it's a way to increase awareness as well.
And once there is a conflict of interest, there are ways to resolve that. Perhaps the governmental official simply removes her or himself from discussions and consideration about matters that would affect that other interest that she or he has.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you have to resign the office of governor or
No.
whatever it is.
No.
You just have to take it carefully. Teresa Kirk, John Turek, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you also for being with us on behalf of the Law Works. I'm Dan Ringer. Good evening. If you have a legal problem and want to know if you need a lawyer, you can discuss your problem with a lawyer by calling 1-800-642-3617 Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. That's 1-800-642-3617. On the LawWorks webpage at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks program topics and additional information about this show's topic. If you would like to recommend this program to a friend, you'll find a video of the program at the LawWorks website. You'll also find free video and podcasts of previous programs on YouTube and iTunes. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future program, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a free copy of this show for classroom use, send us an email to thelawworks@comcast.net.
The Law Works is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia State Bar, the Mountain State Bar, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.